Hey everyone, this is Jacob Tucker from the Story DevRel team, and in this video, I'm going to be talking to you about how Story uses on-chain disputing to make sure that intellectual property is paid properly and used properly on the internet. Now, before we dive into this video, I just want to say a little disclaimer that I'm going to be looking at my secondary monitor for most of this video because my main screen here is actually broken except for my webcam. So that's why I'm looking to the left here. But let's just go ahead and dive right into it. So how does Story actually protect IP, right? This is sort of like the high level overview of why we're even talking about disputes today. So to start out with, Story has a real legal commitment, right? We have what's called the programmable IP license. This is a real, legal license that exists in the off-chain world that is based on U.S. copyright law and can be upheld in any court that can understand or abides by U.S. copyright law. And the terms in this legal agreement, which you can see in this picture right here, are things like, are derivatives allowed, right? Can you remix my work? Can you commercialize my work? What is if you can commercialize my work, what is the rev share that you have to pay me if you earn money, right? So if you take a picture of my face and put it on a t-shirt, what's the percentage I should get from those royalties? Can you use my IP in your AI training models? These are the types of things that are present in this agreement. And so what we've done to bring this on chain and to make it programmable is to take those terms and put them in smart contracts. You can see that here where we have a pill term struct in Solidity code, and those same terms like commercial use, derivative use, AI training models, all those terms are values and are settable inside smart contract code, and thus we have sort of turned these legal off-chain terms into programmable IP licenses that can be set directly in code, right, instantaneously. That is very much needed in the world of AI, where IP is created on a whim, very high quality data, and they need to be licensed quite quickly and also paid properly across a wide variety of social media platforms. And so the third step here, and also fourth step, is, well, how do we then validate IP assets and enforce that those terms are actually being used properly? And so if we skip to step 4 here, this is what we call the Story Attestation Service, and it's really like a bunch of detectives. You can imagine almost platforms or applications as detectives that go out and flag if IP assets are registered improperly, or if they're not, like for example, if they're copyright or infringing on other work. So for example, if I were to register Pikachu, Story doesn't block that, right? I can register Pikachu as an IP, but the Story Attestation Service would flag that is actually an improper registration because it is infringing on Pokemon's copyright. But then step 3 is the dispute module, and this is actually enforcing and taking down and properly paying affected IP assets that are used improperly. And so this isn't just flagging or sort of like putting a badge on IP. This is actually taking down an IP and again making sure royalties are paid out. And so this dispute module, this step 3, is what we're going to talk about today. And so, by the way, this diagram is in our docs if you want to check it out. And so we're also going to be talking a lot about UMA. UMA is as you see here, a decentralized truth machine. And UMA is basically a protocol that powers really popular applications in the world, like Polymarket. This is one of the most popular. It's called a prediction market, I believe, where you bet on who's going to win, the Pacers versus the Thunder. Is there going to be a recession in 2025, and you can vote yes or no. And the outcomes of that prediction market, or those predictions, are validated and enforced by UMA, right? So UMA is really good at that. And so UMA is actually also working with Story to make sure that IP assets are used properly. And if someone were to flag an IP as being used improperly, then UMA would go in and decide on it, right? Is this actually used improperly? Let's look at the evidence, why or why not, etc. And so let's actually go ahead and look at how this sort of works at a technical level. So a user here would initiate a dispute, right? Let's say I own Pikachu, and then so I see that someone else actually registers Pikachu as well. And so I actually call raise dispute on their IP and say, hey, they are not they are not the owner of Pikachu, right? And I provide ample evidence of that. And so UMA would go in, and sort of try to assert that truth, right? Based on my evidence, is he telling the truth, right? And so if no one counters that, right? If the other IP owner that is using my Pikachu improperly, If they, don't say anything, then it will just be true, right? And the judgment will be set and it will be flagged and taken down. If they counter and they say, actually, hold up, we actually created Pikachu before you, they can counter dispute, right? And if they counter dispute, then UMA will go in and decide on the outcome, right? And so what happens here is I initially provide a bond, and this bond is, let's say, 10 wrapped IP token. But if the person wants to counter dispute, right, they would also have to provide the same bond as a counter to say, wait, you're wrong, actually. And then UMA would go in and decide. And I believe what happens is the person that's affected, right, or the person that wins would get the other, would get the counter bond, and UMA takes a cut of that as well. But you can imagine that it's sort of like a battle between who's right, and then whoever wins gets the payment, right? So what's good about this, right, is that if, for example, the IP gets taken down, then from a legal standpoint, the other IP owner is required to pay me the money that I missed out on if that IP potentially earned money, or I could take them to court, etc. Right? So this is sort of like a high level technical overview. And just to show you, right, so this is actually, these are the two disputes that have happened on our mainnet so far, mostly as tests. But if we go in here, this is on our Explorer, we can go ahead and copy this transaction hash. And we can go to, UMA's Oracle and paste in the transaction hash here. And hopefully, if things go as they should, it actually should pop up here. So I don't know why it's not. Let's try it one more time and see if it pops up. Oh, you know what? We actually might have to put, I think because it's already settled, UMA has a different, and there we go. UMA has a different endpoint for that. So this is actually a already settled dispute that happened on Story that is on UMA. And we can see here a description of the dispute and also the evidence that was actually provided by the user, right? So for example, here's the title of the IP, the description, the evidence hash, and the person provided evidence that this IP was actually being used improperly, right? So it's actually very cool. And so what I'm gonna show you in this video actually is how to raise your own dispute in code to, again, flag on UMA that your IP or even someone else's IP is being used improperly. So I'm going to be, I'm taking a sort of dummy IP asset here. This is a song that I generated, so let's just go ahead and listen to it. Right? It's just a fun song that I generated on Suno, which is an amazing AI music generation platform, especially for EDM music. But this is on our testnet, and so I'm going to show you an example of flagging this IP in code. So if we switch over to Cursor here, actually, before we do that, I just want to show you that this code that I'm going to be using is completely available. Actually, I haven't done anything else. You can copy and paste all of it at this repo right here at the github.com/storyprotocol/TypeScript-tutorial. And you can go in here, and if you click on scripts and then click on dispute and then dispute IP, this is the exact code that you are seeing here. So I haven't changed anything else, right? So it's super cool. So I'm going to take, if we go back to Google here, I'm going to take the IP, right, that's in this URL, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to paste it into Cursor, okay? So we're going to raise a dispute on this IP. And then we need to provide evidence here that, why is it disputing? And so if we actually go into, or if we stay here for a second, you'll see we're actually flagging this on improper registration. Now, there's a few things we could put here. If we go into the docs, let's scroll down a bit here, and we can see that for each of the tags, so improper registration, there's improper usage, improper payment, right, if someone doesn't pay, or content standards violations. So if there's like NSFW, violence, stuff like that, you can flag based on what happened, right? And so in this case, we're going to say improper registration, which is most commonly like infringement on copyright, right? So examples, someone copied my song in this case, right? And so the evidence we have to provide is we have to showcase or point to the pre-existing IP that is being infringed upon and proof of public display of the IP at an earlier date than the infringing IP. So we have to provide both of these pieces of evidence. So just for the sake of this example, I'm going to say, here is proof that I created this song. And we're going to just put in like example.com. And then on top of that, we're also going to say, let's say it existed at that date. I don't, just to fill in some dummy data. And then on top of that, we're also going to say, wait, what was the other thing we needed? Was proof of public display. So, this was publicly displayed at, example.com 3 years ago, whatever, right? So 3 years ago. Perfect. So this is evidence, right? And so obviously this is like stupid evidence. Like this would never really help, but it would be something like this, right? And so we're going to take this string here, and in this code here, I already have a function for you to upload this text right here, this evidence text, to IPFS. So if we look at this function really quickly, you'll see all it's doing is just pinning it to IPFS here. And just to quickly note, the only prerequisite to this sort of code example is that you put in your testnet wallet private key, right? So again, it's all on testnet, so not your mainnet private key, but your testnet one. So just use a dummy account for this example, right? Just for testing. And then your Pinata JSON Web Token, which you can get by going to pinata.cloud. And if you go there, click on Get Started or Log In, you can create an API key and paste in your JSON Web Token right there. Okay, so then after that, the only other thing that's needed once we've uploaded our evidence to IPFS, we get a hash back, and then we just call raise dispute via the Story SDK. We set up the client in another file. We can actually see that right here. All we did was put in a simple config to the Story SDK. We put in the account based on our private key, the RPC URL of Story's testnet, and then the chain ID, which is just inade, which is the name of our testnet, called this .dispute.raise dispute. The target IP ID is simply the ID of the IP asset that we are flagging, which we filled in earlier. The dispute hash, which is again just a hash that points to the evidence. Improper registration, right? Which is us saying, this is a copyright issue. And then the bond. Now the bond, we're just going to say is 0.1 wrapped IP here. So again, if the point of the bond is that if there's a counter, then the other person that registered this song, the one that we're disputing, would have to also provide 0.1 wrapped IP to counter, right? And then if I won the claim, I would get that, as winnings. Then the liveness here, this is how long the other person has to counter dispute. And then we're just going to log this and console log it right here. Now, just a quick note for testing purposes, if you don't want to use an actual evidence and you just want to see this function work, you can use this generate CID, which just generates a random hash instead of having to do it via IPFS here. So just in case you want to do that. So in here, I'm going to type in npm, actually, and we're going to also log the hash here so I can show you. We're going to run npm run dispute. And when we run dispute here, hopefully, the demo gods are with us. It looks like they are today, which is really good news. And so I'm going to copy this dispute evidence uploaded, right? So what just got logged is this right here. So we're going to take this hash, and I'm actually going to go back to Chrome here, and I'm going to go to ipfs.io/ipfs and paste in what we got. And you can see, oh, actually, wait, did I save the file? Oh, I never saved the file. Oops. Let me actually go ahead and run that again. I forgot to save the file, so it didn't actually save our proof of evidence. So we're going to go back. We're going to copy this one right here. We're going to go to Chrome, and we're going to paste in that instead. And you can see that here is the text we actually wrote, right? So this is now uploaded to IPFS. And then hopefully if we go back to our cursor here, we should see that the dispute was also raised at this transaction hash, right? And so dispute ID 5790. So if we go to our Explorer, let's actually go to our testnet Explorer. And hopefully it should appear under the dispute section. So here we go, 5790. It has not been appealed yet. Obviously, this happened a few seconds ago, and we can view the dispute happening right here. So it's on this IP asset. We can see the evidence hashes right here. That's the evidence that we uploaded. And then again, if this was on our mainnet, it would go to UMA, and UMA would arbitrate on the decision and come back with a decision in the future. Now, again, if you want to continue exploring disputes, I would really recommend checking out the dispute module right here, the overview, and also the UMA arbitration policy. Story supports any amount of arbitration policies, but for now, we have whitelisted UMA, and UMA is our sole arbitrator at the moment. And on top of that, you can also go to the dispute SDK reference, and in here, you'll see other functions. So, of course, we just use raise dispute, but you can also cancel a dispute. You can resolve it if it's eventually been resolved, and counter dispute and stuff like that. So I hope this video was helpful to you. If you enjoyed, let me know. And if you have any questions, please let me know in the comments as well. So take care, everyone, and have an amazing weekend. Bye.